now go.
Anyway, hate to be a little drum, but I just, I've been watching a couple of news articles this weekend and last night, and the country's really getting crazier and crazier. So, and I'm saying the same thing in hopes to get people's attention, because we need to have a united middle class. A united and healthy middle class creates a strong America. And you have to listen to who wants that to happen and has ways of making it happen. And then we need to vote people in and vote people out according to their strengths or weaknesses. And it's going to take some time to do, to get finally a handle over our political system, because we have no handle over this. And the founding fathers gave us this, we owe it to them. They weren't perfect people, but and they were elites, but they at least saw that this country, the middle class of this country, needs to run the important issues directed by our politicians. And just like you have a head of a company and you have the crew of a company, if that's not going right in a company, one or the other, that company goes out, right? Well, this country is much, obviously a whole different scenario, but it matches a bit, because we're on the way to communism right now, or socialism, and there's no getting around that fact that either we come together and we pull together and we look out for our neighbors and we talk to each other and we do those things that our founding fathers gave us the freedom to do, and or we don't have a society anymore. Anyway, we're going to start getting this down. I'm still working on some lighting. Barbie's moving to California, so she's going to be producer Barbie remote. But I think we might be able to get her on camera this way. So with all of that said, you guys have a great weekend. Say hi to each other. Go out and say hi to somebody. Just wave at them, man. Start that way. Just wave at them. Every time you see them, wave at them if you don't know them. And then you'll see the reaction change, evolve. You'll see the body language evolve. Go out and say hi to a couple of people today. Anyway, love you guys. Thanks for being here.
Did you go out and say hi to somebody today, folks? I really love the music in that thing. I was just talking to Wesley back, and Wesley's back with us today. We already have 44 people on. It's good to see people are starting to show up early to hopefully to watch some of the monologues we're trying to mess around with and get kind of into the setup of each show. But I was just talking to Wesley, and we've started this program, let's call it, of opening monologues about a week and a half ago, a little bit after his last appearance. So let me just open it up with a welcome to Insights and Straight Talk. Today we are stepping into a conversation that I'm going to read some of this monologue, but I think I'm just going to freestyle it, because this is something I'm very, very, very excited about, a subject that's probably making Wesley a little bit nervous, because I'm tugging him into areas that he may have some information about, but maybe not as much as the core subject of what we will be talking about. So today we're stepping into one of the most fascinating and controversial and most universal conversations human beings have ever had. Because before we talk about faith or failure or redemption, we have to talk about something older. The one question every civilization has whispered about for thousands of years: are we alone? And if we are not, then who exactly have human beings been encountering since the beginning of time? Every major religion calls out the others' mistaken or incomplete parts, yet they all describe some beings, the same light, the same messengers from above. And today with Wesley Farnsworth here, we're going to walk through some of those ancient patterns, the modern encounters, and the possibilities that stretch far beyond our horizon. It's the same territory I explore in my book, which Wesley, sorry. I'm starting off great today, aren't I, Wesley? That we talk about in the 13 Whispered Things, the book that I mention every now and then, especially chapter 13, Blinded by the Light, where I talk about a moment that didn't just change my life, it changed my understanding of what might exist around us. So I want to go through a couple of points here that I want to kind of bring up during the show as we talk. Across every continent and in every era, humans describe beings descended from the sky, radiant, powerful, intelligent, delivering warnings, guidance, and knowledge, right? Why do civilizations separated by oceans and centuries tell the same story? So that's kind of one of the points I want to get through today. Every religion claims to see the truth while everyone else is misled. And there's a lot, I don't know how far we can get into this today, but as we know, there's a real big construct going on right now between Islam and Christianity, which is not new through history. We all know that. But yet all of them describe a supreme being, a creator, a beginning that comes from beyond this world. Maybe the similarities matter more than the disagreements. That's another point I want to kind of get across, in some of that, not fighting, although that's been the case. How many wars have been started over religion? So I want to get through that as well. Point 3, angels, watchers, guardians. What are these messengers? Almost every culture has them. Christianity calls them angels. Islam calls them malaika. I hope I'm saying that right. No disrespect if I'm not. Judaism calls them malakim. Hinduism calls them devas. Buddhism describes a bodhisattva, like beings, different names, some descriptions. I want to get through that a little bit today. I'm hoping that we can get some questions from the audience on some of these aspects of religion. Ancient texts, another point, ancient texts speak of beings not born of earth, beings clothed in light, beings who descended and ascended, beings who teach humans knowledge we shouldn't have had, where the spiritual encounters or contact with something else. Is this spiritual? Is this something else? These are important aspects to know, or at least to consider. Another point, modern encounters with unexplained craft and beings are described as using language that echoes ancient scripture. Light, radiance, voices, presence, missing time, protection, knowledge. How can experiences separated by thousands of years sound identical? These are some really important things I want you and our audience. Got 150 people here. So please take some notes and let's expand off. And again, I know, Wesley, we're not going to get too deep into some of these things because we're just kind of opening the conversations and inviting more people into that conversation. Religions have never touched each other, still talk about visitors from heaven. Not metaphors, but as literal encounters. Maybe they weren't describing mythology. Maybe they were documenting events people couldn't understand yet. I mean, that's very, very realistic, right? Since science is now providing what ancient text claimed, the universe is filled with planets, galaxies, dimensions, and possibilities. If life exists elsewhere, and the math says it must, What has humanity been interacting with since the dawn of time? These are things that are to me add, the term I use, add colors between the layers. And to me, that's where things really start to get opened up. In the book 13 Whispered Things, the final chapter, Blinded by the Light, I talk about a moment something stepped into my life that I could neither ignore nor explain. Every person who has had an encounter says the same thing. It was real, it was sudden, and it stayed with them forever. Have any of you had those encounters? Wesley has his own story. Moments where the veil seemed thin, where something unseen moved toward him, not away from him, not to condemn, but to guide, not to punish, but to redirect. That pattern is universal in every single tradition. A couple more points here. Maybe the question isn't whether angels or extraterrestrial beings exist. Maybe the real question is why so many cultures describe them the same way. And that's really got my curiosity. Maybe humanity has always been part of a larger story, and a story that stretches beyond earth, beyond religion, beyond language, beyond anything we were taught to believe. So, and just to kind of get ready for Wesley here. So today we're not debating doctrine or arguing whose religion is right or wrong. We're asking the deeper question. If billions of people across time saw the same things and the same beings, felt the same presence, and described the same encounters, then what have we really been witnessing? Wesley has lived through moments that defy explanation, and today we're going to step in with them together. This is the conversation that expands the mind, shakes the assumptions, and reminds us that the universe is far more populated, far more intelligent, and far more connected than we ever imagined. So before I finish this up here, I just kind of want to expand on that, because we're human beings. None of us are angels. None of us are perfect. None of us are expected to go into heaven being perfect. But these things that happen in our lives, for instance, Wesley had a moment where he growing up in a religious family, father pastor, a very traditional upbringing under the cloth. And then finding the need to follow the path of those around him. We all go those directions, and sometimes we aren't pulled back towards the better truth, the better reasoning. But folks like Wesley were able to bring that back together, and it was through the hand of God. My only question is it different for the folks in the Jewish religion, in the Islamic religion, in the Buddhist religion? And there's 4 or 5 major religions, and then there's subsects, and we can get into all of that. But the point is this guidance, if we can just reach across and one, not go to war, which isn't totally out of the realm of possibility these days, as we see what's happening in our own country and in Europe, and this battle that goes back and forth. But why are we so separated in that eternal message, when that eternal message is what brings us back to places of darkness that we've gone? So I just want to bring that point to light and kind of engage this conversation in that way, and not make Mr. Wesley Farnsworth too nervous about bringing him into an area that is going to have him on the burner, let's say. How are you, brother? Good to see you again.
Man, Rod, it's so good to be back here with you, and I appreciate you having me on and setting the table the way you just did. This is the deep end of the pool, as you like to say in our conversation. Um, but before we jump in, I just want to say something up front. I'm not coming to this show pretending like I have all the answers, because I don't.
Absolutely.
Everything I don't know everything that there is about other galaxies, or definitely the other religions or angels or supernatural encounters or anything like that. I don't know how the universe works. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still asking questions of my own.
Hold on. Holy crap. We have 278 people on. That's cool.
Love it.
But we're 15 minutes. You know how I say we usually get like 20 minutes or so,
Yep.
and then people start, I've told you that before. We already have like 10 questions.
Love it.
Oh my God. All right. So this is going to be fun. Go ahead. So yeah, I know we're, and none of us are. I mean, that's the whole point. None of us are. But just opening up some general conversation, and you're going to say, yeah, this is what I've heard of, or I think of, and then maybe I can fill in some stuff. We'll go back and forth, or maybe you'll say, Rod, come on, dude, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. What do you think about it? Throw it right back on me.
Yeah.
So, if we could play around like that, but go ahead, go with your point. I've just never seen so many people. I mean, even when we went the first time, there were a lot of questions, a lot of people on, but it took a little while. I mean, these folks, maybe because they already know you a bit, but I haven't read the questions yet. But
man, you had so many questions coming at. Like, I'm sure you had questions flowing in just as you were reading what the topic is.
That's what it was. That's what was happening.
I was going to say, all I can do today is I can speak honestly from my own story, my own failures, my own recovery, and my own faith. And that's all I can do. I can talk about what I've lived, and I can talk about how I've seen God work in the middle of my mess and in my life, and how grace has been able to hold me together when everything else fell apart. Because the truth is, I didn't get here. I didn't get here because I had life figured out. If I did, I probably wouldn't be here. But I got here because my life broke. It broke open. I've dealt with addiction and shame and codependency and trauma and all of those things that cracked the image that I spent a long time trying to build and project. So I lived with that mask, and it took me a while before that mask finally fell off. And so I've discovered in that season that God isn't looking for experts. He's only looking for people that are willing to give him your yes. And he meets people in honesty, in humility, in the place where you finally stop running and you say, you know what, I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to be real and share my story and share what he's done for me, what you've done for me, God. So today during this conversation, if somebody asks a question that I don't know, I'm going to say, I don't know. And not because I'm avoiding the question, but because I really don't know the answer. There's a lot of mysteries out there that are unsolved and probably will always remain unsolved. And when it comes to angels, there's biblical backing to angels being an absolute real thing. So I absolutely do believe in them. It doesn't matter what you call them in your religion. But angels, I do believe, are a very real thing. But faith is all about the God who walks us and walks with us through the questions. And so that's what we're here today is I'm excited to share a little bit about my story, a little bit more of my story, recap it for those that are joining us that was able to join.
Please do that. Please do that now, before we get too far. But yes, absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, cut you off there.
No, that's fine. I was going to say, recap it for those that are joining us again that happened to be on the last episode that I was here with you. And really, I want to also just talk to those listeners out there that they feel like their failure. There's something in their life, their way, something that they've done or something that has been done to them or the way they were brought up, that disqualifies them from their faith, that it disqualifies them from something in their life. And if that's you, before we even get started, I just want you to know, and I want you to hear this from the very bottom of my heart. This is the place where you think your story might be ending, but this is where your story is just beginning. God has you and is working in your life, and your past, what's been done to you, what you've done, the way you were brought up, it doesn't define you. And your story is just beginning. A new chapter is going to begin. So I don't have all the answers, but I do have a testimony, and I'm looking forward to being able to share that with you guys honestly here from the beginning. So a little quick recap about myself. I grew up, as Rodd shared.
Hey, Wesley, before you get started on that,
Yeah.
I do want you to do that. I'm going to have to redirect a lot of these, because you're right. They took off right off of my opening comments there. So I'm gonna direct some of these questions that fold into. I mean, not every one of them are. There are about recovery and that, but we're gonna be playing with these folks today. Hey, folks, have fun with us. I'm going to be widening your questions, which will always do the thing I love the most, which means I get to talk more. So I'm for it. So go ahead with your story, Wesley.
That's why you started a podcast, right? So you can talk.
That's exactly right. And the worst part about it is I do a live stream, so I want my face to be. I'm very egotistical, beyond an Apple kind of just talking. Go ahead.
Well, as Rodd alluded to, I grew up in a pastor's house. My dad was a full-time evangelist, so I grew up a pastor's kid.
And hold on, before you go there, evangelist. That's a term. That's a unique part, not a unique, but a particular part of religion. Evangelism is. I grew up Southern Baptist. We talked about that. I'm Protestant. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But it does matter, but not for this conversation. But being and say the word, please.
Evangelist.
An evangelist, thank you, is a next level. That's a very emotional, very forward preaching a style, right? It's not just on a pulpit; it's big time, right?
Well, so an evangelist, when most people think of a pastor, they think of somebody over a specific church. There is a pastor at the church. An evangelist is a traveling pastor, essentially. So they will travel, like my dad did. He traveled the country and would speak at whatever church wanted to have him come in and share his message. And so he would come in and share his heart, and he would sing. And that was his ministry. And so he did that for most of my life. He did have his own church for a very short time right before I was born. But then he was called into evangelism, and that's where he worked and lived and did up into my teen years. So I grew up in the church, though. We were there all the time. And so over the years, I became very good at knowing I like to refer to lovingly as the Sunday school answers. I knew how to pray for people that were sick. I knew how to pray before meals. I knew how, I knew Jesus died on the cross and he loves me, and he died, he died for my sins and all of that stuff. And I lived out my faith, but my faith was, we'll just say shallow. It wasn't super deep because it wasn't really my own. I was going to church because that's where I was told I had to go by my parents. And it wasn't until my adult life that my faith really became my own. And we'll get into that. But in my teen years, I discovered, now looking back as an adult, I've realized that I developed over the years a sense of what's known as codependency. And so essentially codependency is caring more about what other people think about you than what you think about yourself or what God thinks about you. And so over the years, I developed this codependency because I wanted to make sure I was reflecting positively on my parents, on my church, on God. And so I became what I like to call a master chameleon, in which I can blend into any environment. I can talk to anybody just about anything, and fit in. And in my teen years, that came back to bite me. Excuse me, because I was out with some friends one day, and
In there.
And one of the friends said something, and everyone started laughing. And I was like, "Oh, ha 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 ha!" I'm laughing along with them. But I had no idea what they were talking about. It was like,
Right.
and so I'm sitting there,
For
and I'm
a
like,
teen, that's a horrible time. That's a
"Oh,
horrible moment for a teen, isn't it?
it's like your world's falling apart right in front of you because you're like now they're not going to like me. That I'm no longer a part
Right.
of the inside
Right.
joke,
Right. Right. Right.
Uh,
Right.
and so I joked and laughed around and pretended like I knew what was going, just praying that they weren't going to call on me and or ask me something about whatever it was that they were talking about,
Call you out.
and expose me, expose that I didn't know. And so that night I went home and I researched the term, and I don't know what the term was, still don't remember to this day. But it opened up the addiction. It opened up a door to pornography. And an addiction was born. It slowly evolved into addiction. Of course, first it was just a curiosity and then more of an interest, and it kind of slowly evolves. It's not boom, instantaneous overnight. But that night it was born, and it took me a long time to deal with it. And so over the years, as I was dealing with it, there was a lot of time where, I was still involved in the church. I was serving in the church in a lot of different capacities, and everything. But so on the outside, I looked like I had it all together. I was wearing the mask. I was wearing the facade, if you want to say, that everyone thought I was doing well, and that I had it all together, and that everything was good. But on the inside, in my teen years and even into my adult life, on the inside I was broken. On the inside, I was dealing with something, with an addiction that I wanted to get rid of, but I didn't know how. Um, and so as I was dealing with that, uh, it causes you to kind of, in some, not question your faith per se with me, but more, it prevents your faith from going super deep, because you're wrestling with this thing. And so I dealt with that for many years until I found this ministry called Celebrate Recovery. And I was able to go and through Celebrate Recovery, really start working on this and finally beat the addiction once and for all. But over my life, I have seen God provide time and time again, in ways that people just can't. There's no way that you can explain it from a earthly or a worldly or a fleshly, whatever term you want to use, example. I think about one Christmas, and I share this story in my book, The Blueprint of Becoming. But there was
by the way, again, towards the end, like last time, let's go ahead and leave your contact information. I think you left the book website last.
Yep.
I don't remember what, but yeah, do that again before we get. We're a ways away, but you know
Sure.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so that Christmas, my dad had to come off the road, and he had come down ill. He had ended up having a stroke. And it took doctors a year to diagnose it as a stroke. It took them for a long time. They were telling him it was all in his head.
Wow.
And
seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
Wow.
Specialist after specialist, doctor after doctor. And
that's insane.
So that first year, shortly after he had his first stroke, and Adam, Wayne, this question here about what moment in my journey shifted my faith the most, this is going to fit right into that question.
That's why
because
I brought it up,
that Christmas, my parents sat my brothers and I down, and they said, we just can't afford gifts this year. We went from a dual income to a single income family literally overnight. Right. And it's, and we understood, we knew what was going on. And so we said, okay. And we kind of just moved on with life and vowed to make the most of that Christmas that we could. And And so it was Christmas Eve or the night just before. I don't remember the exact date, but it was around that time. And I remember we were sitting in our living room, my two brothers and I and my parents, and we were watching something on the TV, just enjoying company and just kind of hanging out. And there was a knock on the door. And we all just kind of looked at each other, and none of us were expecting anybody. And so one of my parents got up and they went and answered the door. And at the door was a local pastor. And the pastor said, I have some gifts for you in the van that the church has been collecting for you here in the local area. Some churches have been collecting gifts for you on your behalf. And we did not know that this was happening. And so, of course, we were shocked, and we went out and we said, thank you very much. And we took the gifts and we brought them into the house, and the pastor left. And a few moments later, there was another knock on the door. And then another knock on the door. And then another knock on the door. And that night, I kid you not, we had, I wish I could say exactly how many. I know it was at least 3. It might have been more. But we had enough gifts come from churches around the state of Michigan, not just our local town, from around the entire state. Churches had been collecting gifts on our behalfs without us knowing. We had enough gifts that Christmas to cover our entire, to provide for 3 or 4 Christmases from what we were used to, or more. And so that night, God really showed up in my life, and I get emotional. Like, I'm getting emotional now just thinking about it, if I'm being honest. Because that night God showed up and he said, you know what? I love you and I care about you and I'm here for you. And I hear your heart. I hear what's going on in your life. And that moment shifted my faith in a very big way, because it really showed me that God does exist. To know that people from around the entire state was doing something like that on behalf of our family without us knowing, because they were answering a calling that God put on their heart to do it, it's just powerful to think about. And so that's just one story. There were times where I know we had bills due, that checks showed up in the mail from random people that we didn't know, that covered the cost of the bill, or they would just go down and pay the bill without us knowing, and we'd get a zero balance in the mail. Like, just little things like that. I mean, just time and time again, example after example, that I could share, but we'd be here probably for 4 hours or more of me just sharing stories of how God's.
That's why you wanted to block away that 4 hours.
Yeah, before we started the live stream, the last time I was on with Rodd, he mentioned that he occasionally has an episode that'll go 3 hours. And I was like, man, I only have like an hour and a half today, because I had another podcast that I was scheduled to be on, unaware that he had a live show that could go that long. And I felt really bad. And so when we were talking about doing today's episode, I told him, I said, man, I blocked off an entire 3 hours. So,
bring it on.
so I'm here, and we're here, and we're going to sit and we're going to talk and answer questions. And, we'll take as long as we need to try and get to the bottom of as much as we can. Obviously, there's no getting to the bottom of most of the questions we'll talk about today, but we'll dig into them as far as we can and see where it takes us.
There's no getting to the bottom of most things in life. I mean, we are on this human experience. We are on this earth still children, even as adults, and gaining a major experience, as we were talking about earlier, or in the opening monologue, even, things have been going on for so long, and our knowledge is so minuscule compared to, say, God, to the Son of God, Jesus Christ, or to whatever the other religions that I discussed are brought up earlier. in those religions. There's so much more happening that we're just, maybe someday we'll when we get into heaven, the gates of heaven is probably where we'll finally understand all of these things. But you're right. I mean, there's no way to get to the bottom of anything at this point in time. And that's what the beauty of shows like this kind of thing are. This kind of goes on to the back end of what the first question well, by the way, that was Adam. Adam Wayne. Thank you isn't there, that's a Batman reference, isn't it? Wasn't the Bruce Wayne, right?
Bruce Wayne. Yeah.
Yeah, Adam Wayne. I always think of that. But anyway, Damien, go ahead and read this, because this is angelic, and what you were describing, because I don't believe that if we didn't have religion or angels in our life performing these miracles and performing these simple acts, that are more than simple, because it was simple for somebody to do, but to receive, especially the two examples you just gave, in Christmas. I mean, we all know how important that is to children. Just the concept, the idea, the joy, it's a joy thing, not the physical bike or the physical GameStop or whatever, but that joy, and it's joy to the parents too, probably more than the kids actually.
Yeah.
So here, Damien, could angelic encounters be happening today without us recognizing them? And the reason I brought that up is the last part of what he said there. So as a child, you could appreciate those things as you got older, because it didn't necessarily connect so much how important those things are, except for the toys at Christmas under the tree. But these things happen every day, I believe, and we probably don't even. I mean, there's times when I stand back and I see what's going on with this show, and there's an angelic encounter that just pops out of nowhere. By the way, Friday I will officially be the columnist for the Mangum Star newspaper here in town. The county. It's the largest newspaper in the west of Oklahoma. Longest running, I think the fourth longest running in the country, I think, if I'm right. But anyway, so that's just more of that message going out, and I'm kind of excited about that. But to the point that Damien's at, I told you I was going to talk more probably today. Could angelic encounters be happening today without us recognizing them? This is one you can certainly, definitely, at least offer an opinion, and maybe even pull off of your own story you just said. Right?
Yeah. I definitely think that encounters are happening today in some way, shape, or form. I can't say exactly how or give examples. But I can say that in the Bible, it's very clear that angelic encounters do happen. There's several exampple that are given, and so
I don't want to expose you here, but because I know you're religious, but I'm not. I don't study the Bible either. And
sure,
what you're saying now, do you have any examples that you could bring out?
Yeah,
you think of?
Let's just stick with the Christmas theme, because I shared my Christmas story, and now we're here Christmas. I've got my tree behind me. I didn't turn it on. I wish I had now. I just, when you think of the Christmas story, part of the story is the angel of the Lord appearing to the shepherds in the fields, and telling them that Christ the Savior has been born, and to follow the North Star, and then the angel of the Lord appearing. The angel of the Lord appearing above the manger, after he was born, so there are just numerous.
Oh, I don't know. Whoa. That one escapes me. Can you expand on that one a little bit? I know the North Star, right?
Yeah.
Merce, and but after he was born.
Yeah, there was a host of angels that appeared above the manger, saying, "Glory to God in the highest, peace on earth, goodwill to all men." And
is that where that comes from? Is that where that I did not know. Wow. Okay. I'm embarrassed. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's several examples in scripture about angels appearing to men and giving direction and delivering a message. I mean, there's the angel of the Lord that appeared to Mary to deliver the message from God that she was gonna give birth to Jesus, and to encourage her and to tell her what was happening. And so, there's numerous examples like that in the Bible of angelic encounters. So do I think that they still happen today? Yeah, I absolutely do. How they happen, I don't know. I mean, it could very well be the person standing next to you, and they deliver a message to you, and then, boom, they're gone the next. I mean, I don't know. It could very well be that. It could be any number of things. I definitely think that God speaks to us through other people, and he speaks to us through his Holy Spirit, that still small voice, that quiet voice inside of you, also known to some people as your conscience. There's different things, different ways that the Spirit speaks to you. And so, yeah, the answer to the question is, yeah, I do believe that they still happen today. And as far as extraterrestrial experiences, being misunderstood as spiritual awakenings, Kevin, I can't say anything about that. Do I believe extraterrestrials exist? I have no idea. Would I like to think that they exist? Sure, why not? That's fun, especially when you think about all the alien movies that are out there and stuff, that we love to watch. I mean, I love the movie like Independence Day and those types of things. So,
a good movie.
So do I think that they exist? I would love to think so, but do I know for sure? Nope. Will we ever know for sure? I highly doubt it. So, could they be misunderstood as spiritual awakenings? I guess it's plausible, but I don't believe that that's necessarily it. So that's kind of where I'm at on that.
Yeah, I would just add to that. First of all, I mean, I've thought a lot about this, and in the original opening monologue, which I think I sent that one to you, I talked about how when you break all the way down, like you and I have both been through the same thing: codependency, not abuse, but abuse of a substance or an activity. In pornographic, same thing. There's different groups around that are there to aid people in their own instances. But as in that opening monologue, I had said, when you finally hit rock bottom, you kind of almost look out and look up and start looking at the world differently and asking more questions and wanting to know more, because this is a big deal when somebody is caught up in addiction for a very large or a unique part of their life. And addiction doesn't just hurt you; it hurts the family and everybody around you. So when you finally get to that point, you start asking a lot of questions, which I have done, and again, don't have the answers. But I mean, could aliens be? And I'll get to the spiritual side, but could they be travelers from the future? I mean, there's so many different possibilities of what we experience that we don't even have enough knowledge of to interpret for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, when I think about just the vastness of the galaxy and of space, it is way too big for any human to be able to understand or wrap our mind around. I mean, let's just be honest. We don't even understand our own planet and the things that go on in how it works and the intricacies, because I don't think we were designed to fully understand it. God's mind,
and that's interesting.
God's mind is it is so much bigger. God's mind is so much bigger than ours. He created this entire world. The Bible says he did it all in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. And so, it if he can do all of that in a matter of days,
Right.
like can you just imagine the intricacies that had to go? The fact that he said, he told the waters where to stop to give us land. He created every animal. Like, just trying to wrap your mind around that, there's just no way to be able to fully understand it all. So if we can't understand our own planet and the intricacies of how our own
Oh, good
planet
point.
is made and operates and everything else, how are we going to understand the entire galaxy and all of the other planets that are out there and how they work and everything else? I mean, it's just not possible, and I don't think it ever will be possible.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's not, because I mean, at some point, if that is all possible, then what's left? I mean, that you're right. It's infinitesimal. I'm not saying that right, but you know what I mean. You're doing your
I like it.
magic. Oh, the word?
Yeah, it works out good to me. Just go with it.
Okay, we're going with it. Are you messing with your fidget thing?
Yeah, I have it in my hand.
I thought you were. I thought I heard a couple marbles there. Hey, I'm going to throw this one. I'm going to throw this one at you. It's Damien again. He's asking kind of another twist to that question that he asked earlier up. I'm all the way down at the bottom here. I'm jumping around trying to move this in, but it's an interesting question. And like you said, we'll never really understand it all. And how can we? I mean, none of us are. We're not Jesus, much less the Son of God or the Spirit of God, much less, to me, where the breakdown from religion started are the different being, or the different, I'm going blank on the name now. Messengers of God. There's a different word I was trying to think of though. That's where, Muhammad versus Jesus, and there's several others. And we went through earlier, the angels with their different names. That's where it all starts to break down. And how I like to kind of sort that out in my own head, right or wrong, or probably wrong. But how I like to sort that out is a thing that I put out on social media and have seen is, God is real. God is, and you can't, I don't know how anybody can not say that today. I know there's atheists out there and so forth. But God is real, but religion's man-made. And I don't mean any disrespect of that. But my concern about faith is that religion is man-made, meaning, I mean, the popes in Catholicism, right, the most powerful Christians, supposedly, right, on that there is, they used to use religion as a tool for war, right, and to subdue crowds and this and that. So now you have the perfect God, the message of Jesus, the message of God, interpreted, and not necessarily interpreted, because a lot of it's written straight. What is there? 140 authors of the Bible? Am I right about that? Is that a correct number?
And now that you ask me off the top of my head, I can't.
I know there's a lot of authors, through different time that were, the John, the prophet was the word I was thinking of, between Muhammad and Jesus and whatever the other ones are called. That's where it starts, to me, in my mind, starts to have this separation. And for what reason, I don't know, because different areas look at, we're preached to in different ways, right? And then, of course, all religions are trying to spread their religion across nations, across the world. So the way I look at it, folks, for you guys asking, and we'll build on this a little bit, but the reason I wanted to have this part of the discussion is because I wanted to say this. And I just believe that God, his message is here for us, and how we can get back to the kingdom, his kingdom. And then so we were all kind of through evolution, were brought up in different parts of the world. And so we have different skin colors, and we have different languages and different traditions. And so at that point, were the leadership in those different areas wanting to control people. So they created that religion from the message of God to impact their own region, let's call it, area of the world, and so on and so on and so on. It's just one of those curiosities I've always had as to why there is one God. And I think all religions say that there is one God. If you go through and look at the different writings, there is one God. There are different prophets, but again, those prophets recognize each other and announce that prophet existed. The stories, the flooding of the earth is in every single religion. Heaven and hell, they're described slightly different, but they're in every single religion. And there's more and more and more and more. So it just, to me, it makes religion, to me, more fascinating and more evidence of existence, for two reasons. One, I don't believe that a human being necessarily would naturally do the things that you described in the Christmas and after your family grew on some real hardship. Yes, there are kind people out there, but I think a lot of that is built from the higher being. And so, all of that exists. And then there's this additional layer, and I hope I'm not laying too much into this, but there's this additional layer that while it exists, is there this other controlling feature that governments and other societies have had to influence the population to move in the direction that they want? Does that make sense, everything I just said, or am I trailing off?
To me, it kind of was trailing off a little bit. I kind of have a little hard time following the thought process there.
Fair enough.
What I will say, though, is, I think that there are some things that are mentioned in every religion that are probably looked at from slightly different angles. Okay. And I can only say what I believe to be true based on the Bible, which is God's communication to us through written form. And so that's what I believe to be true, and that's what I base my beliefs off of, and everything. And so I'm not going to say 100%, that some other religion's interpretation of something is wrong. But I can just say that it doesn't necessarily align with what I believe from my own experience and my own upbringing. And so when you start thinking about the differences, and things, the question that just popped up here is, how do we tell the difference between imagination and true encounters? It's something that can be hard to do. I think about my own life and my own faith. And when you think about your imagination and the flesh, it's very easy for it to mislead you. I believe that the enemy, the devil, uses your flesh against you to try and mislead you. And so there's a lot of times that I've been like, okay, like this is something I feel like I'm being told to do. And it doesn't.
You mentioned gut instinct. You mentioned gut instinct.
Your
earlier,
gut
right?
instinct is one way that I kind of check that. But there's it's hard to sometimes say, is this my imagination? Is this my flesh? Or is this a true encounter? Is this something that God is actually telling me to do?
Right. Exactly.
And so when I think about that question, it was something I was wrestling with even just a few months ago. And as I was in the process of doing this and wrestling with it and praying, I say, God, help me to know if this is actually you speaking to me, or if this is just my flesh, if this is the enemy trying to get me to do something. And he gave me this 3-point checklist that I've started using to help me differentiate if it's my imagination or my flesh, or if it's actually him. And so I'm going to share that with you guys today. I wasn't planning on doing this, but here we go. So the first thing and the first question on the checklist that I always ask myself is this thing that I feel like I'm being told to do something that will further the kingdom of God? And if the answer to that question is yes, then there's a good chance that it could be from God. So then I move on to the second question, and that second question is it something that the devil or the enemy would want me to do? If the answer to that is no, it's something he would not want me to do, then that's a stronger indication that it's probably from God, because the enemy doesn't want you to do anything that will further God's kingdom.
True.
So now we've moved on to this third point, this third part of the checks and balances, and that is we know that it's going to further the kingdom of God, or it could. We know that it's likely not something the enemy would want me to do, and so now we have to look at our flesh, and we have to determine, is this something that me under my own power would want to do and would be comfortable doing? And so then you have to do some internal examination.
What do you mean by that? Wait, what do you mean by that?
And let me give you an example. So when I was looking at publishing my book, The Blueprint of Becoming, this was something I wrestled with, because for a long time I had been sharing my testimony, which is the first 2 chapters of the book. I'd been sharing my testimony within the Celebrate Recovery arena, and helping people through that. And I really felt like God was telling me it was time to take it outside of the walls of Celebrate Recovery and to share it with a larger audience. And that is extremely vulnerable thing to do, because you are opening yourself up now for literally the world to be able to read your story and what you've dealt with and the things that you've gone through. And as a codependent, somebody that cares about what other people thinks, that's terrifying, because I want everyone to like me and accept me. And so, so my flesh is saying, oh, no way. Don't do this. Like you don't know what's going to happen with this. You have zero control. And so using that checklist, I know that it could further the kingdom of God, because I shared not only my personal story of my testimony of my upbringing and the stuff that I've gone through and my addiction and all that fun stuff, but I share biblical stories about how God used other people in the Bible, and despite what they had done, and I provide practical tools that people can use to work through and examine their own life. So I knew that number one, I knew that could further the kingdom of God. Number two, I knew that it was definitely not something the enemy wanted me to do. And so now I looked at myself, my own internal, my internal, and I knew that under my own power, it's something I would not do, because and everyone's like, well, you would publish a book to make money. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're hearing my voice, you don't publish a book to make money unless you're like one of the top 5% or 3% of the authors.
Very few.
They get paid millions of dollars or thousands of dollars to write a book. Like most authors make between $1 to $3 max per copy of the book that's sold. You know,
Yep.
people think I pay $18, $20, $40 for a book. Well, that's just the retailers and the publicists and everything else taking their cut. Like when it's all said and done, the author makes very little. So from a
True.
publication standpoint, I definitely am not doing it to make money. And that rationale is out the window. I definitely didn't do it to draw attention to myself, because again, I'm opening myself up to potential critiques from other people. And so using my 3-step checklist, I was like, okay, I know it can further the kingdom of God. I know that the enemy likely doesn't want me to do it. And I know that it's not something I normally would want to do on myself based on what we just talked about. And so the chances are that is God telling me to do it.
What if 2 out of the 3? What if 2 out of the 3? Like, I would definitely do it, the last one. But the other 2, I agree. I'm with you on. So
Yeah.
let's take this show. What if I'm like two strikes and a ball? No, 2 balls and a strike.
2 balls and a strike.
However you want to. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess. However you want to say it. What
Yeah.
if you're 2 out of 3 on that?
Then you do some internal examination and you really think about it.
Okay, dive deep a little.
You go deeper and you really take some time, and that's when you
Makes
continue
sense.
you continue praying about it. Or you go to I'm a huge believer and person that talks about community. Every show that I'm on, every episode that I do on my own podcast, Unmasked, I talk about.
Where's that podcast at? Let's go ahead and mention that.
Yeah,
Unmasked.
yeah. The show is
On?
Unmasked with Wesley Farnsworth. It's on Spotify and anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And then I do a YouTube version of it as well, where you can watch the interview take place.
Gotcha.
I drop episodes twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday. So,
Oh wow. Good
yeah,
for you.
it's a new show. Just only been out about 3 weeks now. But it's gaining traction quickly, and it's exciting.
Wait a minute. That's about the time you were on my show.
About a
About
couple weeks after, because it's been just over a month since I've been on your show.
So it was a couple weeks after you started your own show.
Yep.
You were probably already working on it. I was going to try and take some credit.
Actually, no, I was not even thinking about it. And
oh, really?
And that's actually where that's another. Let's use this example since we're now on the topic. We'll use this as my my checklist. Number 1, is it something I was thinking about doing this on it was a Wednesday night. And it was a Wednesday night, and I'd been thinking about doing a podcast for years, but I completely forgot about it. And it was a Wednesday night, and I'm sitting here, and God's like, I want you to start this podcast. You've been thinking about it for years. I want you to start this podcast. And I said, God, I've been unemployed for 7 months. I don't have the money to start a podcast, because there's some fees that go with it, and getting the right software and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, there is.
But I prayed about it, and I talked to God in a very real way, like I'm talking to you. Okay, God, like I feel like this is what you're telling me to do. I don't have the money to do it. And I say, you're going to have to provide. If you want me to do it, I'll do it. I know that it could further the kingdom of God. And so that was check 1. I know it's not what the enemy wants me to do, because the enemy doesn't want me to talk about the topics that I talk about on my show.
Absolutely.
And so that's number 2. And I know from a comfort level, it was not something I normally would do, because now again, I'm exposing myself in a lot of different ways. But I'm a little bit more comfortable now as I've been going on podcasts and doing stuff talking about my book and stuff. But I said, God, if you want me to do this, then you're going to have to provide. Like, what it's going to cost me. You're going to have to provide. I said, so essentially I said, God, the ball's in your court. Right. And
it's where it should be.
I kid you not. The next day, 24 hours later, almost exactly, I walk into my Celebrate Recovery meeting, and somebody comes up to me as a third party and hands me an envelope. And the envelope says, from an anonymous source. And inside of the envelope is the cash that I needed to start my podcast.
Oh my goodness.
And
Wow.
I looked in the envelope.
Hey, God, are you listening? Are you listening right now?
I opened the envelope. I saw the cash and I started laughing.
Wow.
And I said, okay, message received. I came home that night and I started my podcast. I recorded my introduction, my teaser, my trailer for the podcast. And so, I mean, I only told one person about it. One. And I can't say if that was them that provided the money. It could have been somebody else, because there's a lot of people that know I'm unemployed at the moment and have randomly done, simple things like that. But for it to be almost the exact dollar amount that I needed, like that's a God thing. Like, hands down, it had to have been.
100%.
And so, that's one of those things where I put that checklist into account. But to answer your question with the 2 balls, 1 strike, analogy, where maybe you're at two of the 3, I mentioned,
yeah, like I'm never going to shy away from doing this.
I mentioned community on my podcast time and time again, because community is so important. Life is not meant to be done alone in any way, shape, or form. I mean, you look back at the Bible, and even at the very, 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 very beginning in Genesis, God created Adam, and then he realized that Adam was alone. And so he created Eve so that he would have somebody to do life with. Community is meant to be a part of our lives. And so I tell people, if they're in that situation where like, I've got 2 of the 3 and I'm not quite sure on that third one. Well, that's when you go to your community. You go to your pastor, you go to the people that know you really, really well. And you say, hey, here's what I feel like I'm being told to do. Here's what I feel like God is telling me to do. Here's where I'm at right now in the decision-making process. What do you think? And you let them be the outside voice, the voice of reason, and help you to make that determination, because people are going to look at you through a lens other than your own, because they're able to look at you through, I would argue, more impartial lenses than you would look at yourself. I like to say we're our own worst critic, but we're also our own biggest fan. Everything we do is perfect, or everything we do sucks in our mind. I don't think there is much of an in between. And so if you're stuck and you don't know how to answer that third question, whether it be part 1, 2, or 3, that you're stuck on, then go to talk to your community. And if you've built the right community around you, then they'll be able to give you that impartial opinion from a third party and help you be able to flush it out and make that decision.
Well, right here, just now, right this moment, what we're talking about today, and some of these things, are they messages? Is this our imagination? Are angels, is God putting us in certain paths or certain positions or certain places to where that message is moved forward? And, just what you just said, I was saying it kind of tongue in cheek, but true, in that your checklist, right? And what you just said connects perfectly, because what we talk about is community, right? And I never thought about, hey, you know what? I have questions on some of the things I'm doing, but I don't trust myself enough to be able to. I'm getting better at it. I talk to God a lot. I talk to God just like we talk now, like you said earlier. And yet here we are. You just gave a perfect example of number 3. And I wasn't planning on asking that question, but you brought up your checklist. So you see what I'm getting at? You see the blocks I'm building here, or, laying out in that, these things literally happen. It seems like almost on a regular basis, especially if you're on a mission. It seems like things, the answers or the ability or the things needed or the cash that, those things just seem to kind of flow with you as you're going on that path.
Well, and
here we are.
Yeah, and I'll give you another example. There was a Sunday I was sitting in church, and I'm just going to put a disclaimer here. I don't share any of this to boast. I don't share any of this to make myself seem holier than thou, or to put myself in a positive light. I just want to put that out there because I can see where some people would think that.
Sure.
But I'm sitting in church one Sunday, and I really felt like the Spirit and felt like God told me, He's like, I want you to start speaking and open up the doors to speak, and preach and do things like that. And I said, I was like, I'm like, okay. I started running through that 3-part checklist, and I was like, no, that's not me. Nope. And my dad was a pastor. My dad's dad was a pastor. So I come from a line of pastors. But I say, I was my own worst critic. And I said, I don't think that's me, God. I think you missed you're trying to get to the person behind me, the row behind me. And so
Earl was a little bit short.
Yeah.
Earl was just a little bit short.
I didn't mean to stand up when you shot that. Sorry, and so
well played.
And so I was like, and so I fought God on it for an entire week. Like that week, I was wrestling with it all week. And so the next Sunday, I'm standing in church and we're in worship again, and God comes down and he's telling me the same thing. And again, I'm wrestling with him, and the entire service I'm wrestling with him. I couldn't tell you what the pastor spoke on that Sunday because I was just wrestling with God. And that's what I felt like he was telling me to do. And at the end of that service, I finally was like, okay, God, I hear you. I give up. I know it's not worth fighting you because I'm going to lose. It's not worth fighting about. You're going to lose anyway. And so I was like, okay. I was like, I'm in. Whatever you want to do. And he said, he's like, okay, put your money where your mouth is and prove it. And he's like, go up to the pastor and offer to preach for him. And I was like, oh boy. And so I went forward and I went to the pastor and I told him what I felt like God was telling me to do. And I made the offer, and I haven't preached for him yet. But I gave God the yes, and I followed the 3-point checklist, and I was like, okay, like this is what I feel like I'm being told to do. And I said, okay, God, I'm yours. Let's do it. And literally, again, less than 24 hours, the very next day, I got a phone call. And it was from a church in the area that was without a pastor, and they asked me to fill their pulpit on a couple of Sundays.
Really? A different church?
Yep.
Did I hear that right?
Yep. It was a different church, not the one I attend. I had heard that they were looking, and I had sent a message to them like months before and never heard back. But 24 hours after I finally took that step of obedience and said, okay, God, he opened the door, and they called me 24 hours after I said yes. And they booked me for 3 Sundays. And then a week to 2 weeks later, another church booked me for a few Sundays because they were without a pastor, or were going to be without a pastor. Their pastor was in the process of resigning or retiring or whatever. And now I have another church that's talking about bringing me in. And I had people random people that didn't know that I had been wrestling with this, didn't know that this was what I was looking at. There's in religion, a lot of people refer to the congregation of a church as a flock, right? And the pastor is the shepherd. And I had somebody randomly say to me, thank you for being our shepherd. And in the context, it had nothing to do with me preaching or being a pastor or anything. I was just simply guiding. They asked me where to go, and I guided them to where they were supposed to go for whatever we were doing.
Wow.
But the word choice, and so I'm just like, it's just simple things like that. That it's just like random examples of random things that have happened in my life that nobody can tell me it's not God, because there's no other way to explain it.
Good point. Excellent point. So we're gonna pivot. There's like 3 or 4 questions left that are going to be a little more outside of the range you want to chat on. So
Let's do it.
I'm gonna throw them at you. First one's up there already. Matt Cole. Oh, that sounds like from Hawaii. I think, yeah, right, Nicole? That looks like Hawaiian kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which I love that island. My sister was born in Hawaii. How do ancient texts describe beings descending from the sky so similarly? And I think this, to me, this goes back to my because, right, Jesus ascended and descended, right? I mean, these are things that throughout Scripture are talked about, as well as on this ancient alien show that producer Barbie used to make me suffer through all the time. A great concept, just a really stupid points the show always made, but it was really, really popular. I don't know if you ever saw it, but the ascending and the descending, in the light, these are all very consistent. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that, in my opinion. I mean, we're human beings, so we're finite. We're limited in our imagination and our thought processes. So, I mean, I can imagine that a lot of different people would just say that, because there's the sky, there's the heavens. We're just people on this earth, not knowing much about it. Certainly, 1,000 years ago, a lot less. But I mean, this to me is an interesting question here. Why do ancient texts describe beings ascending from the sky so similarly? And I know how I would want to answer this. How do you want to answer that?
I would just go back, and I would refer back to the question that we talked about earlier with just there's biblical examples of angels appearing in the sky and or descending, or whatever terms you want to use. And so there's examples of that in the Bible. And so I not knowing exactly what events you're talking about, I can't speak to it specifically. But there's very clear examples of it. And so I think it's probably just people explaining the exact same things from their different points of view, and just sharing their experiences from those events.
Well, yeah, and you brought up one of the more famous ones that I totally was unknowledgeable of, or not unknowledgeable of, but when Jesus,
the whole Christmas
was
story,
born, yeah. I mean that's a consistent theme. I mean, you look at paintings, Michelangelo and some of the religious paintings coming out through over thousands of years, and you see angels, you see things ascending, you see light, so this has been throughout the human conscious, and so it's an interesting. I'm glad we're kind of like expanding into that a little bit. Maybe not on this show. We would you again, chat. There's other discussions to be had on that as well. But to me, there's something because of the way religion is structured in today's environment, and always has been, as far as history, right, can think of, right, thousands of years long before me, but definitely long before me. But it's this seems to be a message that kind of needs to kind of flush out a little bit. I think mainly because it's so well. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know already. What's going on in Michigan with the Islamic uh, the Islamic religion really taking hold, and it's Dearborn, I think it is, but which is what it is, and I don't want to get into that. I mean, we can if you want, but I don't want to get into that discussion. But what's happening now is really Christians are really coming head to head. And Europe is even more so in that direction. I think it's important that we talk about these things now, because when you don't talk, that's devastating. That's where misunderstandings come, and misunderstandings are always emotional, and that's where heat and things build off of there. So, to your point earlier, I think there's just sometimes that to me, this message became really, really important over the last couple of weeks, when we started talking about it. And it just feels to me like we should be just airing out these things because we don't know enough. But there's a point where you can get to, and I think we are living in a time that it's important that we get to it. And so that's why I really wanted to push these questions, because there's a path we have to go down to. Otherwise, there's going to be another freaking religious war. The Christians and the Islamic, the battle between the Quran and the Bible is not new. I mean, you remember the movie The 300, right?
Mm-hmm.
The very famous movie that's based on this exact thing. So it's been going on for thousands of years. Now it could be even, back then you could only do so much damage. Now you can do a lot more damage, obviously. But so that's why I bring that up. And these things are curiosities that I think, by chatting it out without defending your own upbringing,
Mm-hmm.
starting with God. And that's why I hold on to that aspect, because everybody has that aspect within their religion. And just moving on to Paula here. Do modern encounters with light mirror the stories from ancient religions? I don't know how much you want to dive into that, but they're kind of in the same theme. How do you want to address Paula there?
I'm not sure exactly what specifically is being asked, because there's or what stories or anything to be able to answer it really.
So what I think Paula's getting at here is do modern encounters with light mirror stories from ancient religions? So, and I think really the question should be ancient writings, because all religions are ancient.
Right.
I mean, there's the Old Testament, the New Testament, blah, blah, blah. Go ahead.
Right.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think this is very similar to the last question, and it goes back
Correct.
to the same answer. There's very clear written examples of light or angels or anything. And, I on my own podcast, I had a guest recently, and I don't want to give away too much because the episode hasn't aired yet, and I want you to come and listen to my podcast.
Can we get a
I'll give you a poke, a synopsis. Yeah,
a
there
little
you go.
something. Yeah.
But I had a guest share a story of something that they had gone through, and they had somebody that had passed away appear to them, and they were able to find healing from that. And so, was it them in angel form? Was it like, they don't know? I don't know. But I do know the story that they shared and the healing that they found from that encounter. And so, do I think that it still happens? Sure. And does that mirror stories from ancient religions or whatever? Probably, because it's the same thing. But specifics,
It's the
it's
same
hard
issues. That's what's so weird. You just said something that's not weird. I shouldn't say whatever it is. But to your point, could it be the same kind of stories thousands of years ago
Yeah.
that we're also hearing today? Are they? Well, I told you we're all human. We're living this human experience. I just say that because it sounds really cool.
Yeah.
The fact that you read a lot of stories in the Bible that you hear about today, like what you were talking about with your friend in the podcast, your guest. And here's the thing: it's been thousands of years, and we still don't get it. We still aren't there yet. I mean, we have choice, right? I mean, God, we have freedom of choice, and that's the difference between. If we didn't have freedom of choice, obviously we'd all be perfect, right? We'd all be godlike, but we do, and the reason being is because we're God's children. It's like my father gave me freedom of choice, right? He could have just never let me do anything else. And what would I have been like if I didn't have that freedom of choice? But there's risk with that, because if you have freedom of choice, like you said, the flesh, the devil, also has that influence now.
Yep.
But would society be different now than it was then? There's so many amazing questions that really come up through that. But my point being, what you said, literally thousands of years ago, a similar discussion or a vision was happening back then. And do you believe they still happen today? Yes, you do. And the reason is because we still haven't gotten it down yet. We're still screwing it all up, right?
Yeah, we're humans. We're naturally going to screw things up. That's why we got to stop relying on our own power and only rely on God. Because as humans, we're flawed people. We're broken people. We're going to screw things up if we try and do it under our own
susceptible.
Power. Yeah,
flawed and susceptible.
Yeah, and and so I think that's actually a really good segue into this next question about spiritual encounters. Are they meant for guidance or protection, or both? And the answer to that is both.
I think so.
When you have an encounter and you're in sync and you're listening to the Spirit of God speak to you, and you're having that spiritual encounter, then He's going to provide you guidance on what you should do. And if you follow that guidance, then it's going to protect you from some things happening. Is it going to stop all things from happening? No, because this is a flawed world, and things happen. Things are going to happen, and God never promises that if you follow Him, your life is going to be all rainbows and sunshines or teddy bears and unicorns. Like, it's not all going to be, good. Things are going to happen to you. I mean, if only good happened, then I wouldn't be here sitting on this podcast now at 8 months and 2 days of being unemployed, because I can't find a job. I can't find a full-time job, which God did just provide as of the other day, that I get to start in a couple of weeks. But
what job?
I'll be doing some sales for a company here local. So is it
sales is the best job? Don't you dare say that. I know what you're going to say. Sales is the best job ever.
Hey, bro. You know what? It is not in line with what I traditionally do with my background.
I know. We talked about it last time.
But you know what? That doesn't mean it's not what God has for me next. There's probably something to learn from this job that I need for something else down the road. And that's how I'm going into it. There's something that I need to learn that to be able to take away from it for something else that He has for me in the future. And maybe I'll fall in love with it and it'll be my career for the rest of my life. Who knows? You just never know. So absolutely, encounters are meant for both guidance and protection. And those encounters can also happen in the darkest moments, which is
don't read it. This one I want you to spend some time on, because I know you're going to be able to really fill this out we've kind of hinted to it, but this one I've been holding on. This is really our last question, because this is something you can really fill out and really, because of your faith and your history and your background. And we've both been in those darkest moments. So go on. Yeah, we'll go ahead and read it now. I just wanted to set that up a little bit. Hold on. Rick, thank you for this question very much.
Absolutely. Yeah. I noticed that the listeners have gone kind of silent. There's not been a whole lot of questions come in. So if you still have questions, get them in, because we're running out. But
we
yeah,
are. You know what? This has been a fast hour and a half, though, hasn't it?
It has.
It's already an hour and a half. It just kind of.
I looked at the time.
They are drying up.
I looked at the time just a second ago. I was like, man, it's already been an hour and a half. We've been talking.
Crazy.
But it's fun. I love it. I love the conversation that's going on. So the question asked though is, why do people feel presence during their darkest moments? And it's in those moments, those dark moments of your life, that you tend to start looking for answers in places that you probably wouldn't have looked for them otherwise, because now you are in a very vulnerable place, and you are in a space where you are essentially in a spot where it's outside of your control. And so you're in this dark season of your life, and you're like, okay, like something has to change, but you're not quite sure what. Something has to be altered in order for you to be able to continue to function, to continue to be able to survive. And in some cases, maybe even forgive, there was a season of my life where I was in some dark spaces. I was neck deep in the addiction, and I was crying out saying, God, take this from me. I don't want it anymore. And despite trying to do that, I knew he was with me and he wanted to help me. But I was also in the moment trying to also do his job, right? I was trying to heal myself, while simultaneously asking him to do it. And he was like, you know what? You have to let me do it. You have to give up the control. Those were some dark moments for me, because I was essentially at rock bottom. I knew that I couldn't do it on my own anymore, but I didn't know how to let go of control. I didn't know how to admit to somebody else the exact nature of my wrongs. There's a step in recovery where, at least through Celebrate Recovery, I don't know about the other programs specifically, but through the Celebrate Recovery program, there's a step that says you have to, after you've stepped out of denial that there's a problem, you have to be able to admit the exact nature of your wrongs to another human being. And it was
that is also part of AA. Yes, go ahead.
And it's scripture. And scripture tells us to do that. But I was wrestling with it. I'm in this dark moment. I'm at my low point. I'm at essentially my rock bottom. And I'm like, God, take it from me. Like, I don't know what to do. And he brought me into Celebrate Recovery that first night. And I remember walking into the recovery meeting that first night and saying, you know what, I'm going to sit in the back and just be there, and then I can leave and say it wasn't for me. I gave myself an out. And for whatever reason, I was the only new person there that night. And a part of Celebrate Recovery is, if you're new, the very first night that you attend an informational meeting, if you will, called 101. And that's just where they kind of walk you through what Celebrate Recovery is. They tell you about the ministry, what you can expect every week when you attend, that type of stuff. And you're able to talk with the leaders. And so I'm sitting there and I'm going through the 101. I decided to stick around for it. And the leader looked at me and he said, "What brings you in tonight?" Now, if you're thinking about going, know that you don't have to share, right? It's completely optional. You're not required to share anything. You can go just to go and learn about the program.
True.
But that night, I decided, I said, I'm here for codependency, which prior to that night, I didn't even know was a thing. But I had heard it shared on stage, and it was like, oh, hey, that person's describing me. And so when he asked that question, I said codependency, because it was an easy out. It was something new, and I just kind of went with it. I didn't think it was as bad as my big thing, my addiction. And he said, okay. He's like, thanks for letting me know, or whatever. And he reached over and he picked up his notebook, which has kind of the script or the points that you're supposed to talk about. And he starts to pick it up and he stops and he looks back at me and he says, "Is there anything else?" Now, I'm going to tell you right now that I, as a member of Celebrate Recovery and as a leader of Celebrate Recovery today, and as a person that leads this introduction, this welcoming class, that question, "Is there anything else?" is not in the script anywhere. He had zero reason to ask me that, except for the fact that it had to have been a God thing. It had to have been the Spirit telling him to ask me this question. And it was in that moment, that moment of vulnerability, that moment where I've been wrestling with this thing that for over 20 years that I'd been wrestling with this addiction, and I was at the rock bottom and I knew something had to change. He asked me, "Is there anything else?" And I began weeping in front of him. And I just, without even knowing what I was doing, I blurted out this secret that I've been carrying for so long. And I said, "I've been struggling with pornography. And I need help. I can't, I don't know what to do." Now, going into the meeting, I had the enemy speaking into my ear. He was telling me what he'd been telling me my entire life. Nobody else is going to understand. You're unique. They're going to persecute you. They're going to tell you to leave the church. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. Everything that he could. He was telling me everything he could to keep me where he wanted me. And that was in his control. And living in shame, living in fear. But when he said, "Is there anything else?" and I blurted out this thing that I've been carrying for 2 decades, the exact opposite happened. I wasn't met with rejection. I was met with acceptance. I wasn't persecuted. I was loved. I was, the only words I heard out of his mouth was, "You're a brave man for admitting that. Thank you for your honesty and trust."
Wow.
Every lie that the enemy had been telling me for 2 decades to keep me right where he wanted me was shattered in moments, in seconds, in milliseconds. And a switch was flipped in my head. And my road to recovery began. And so why do they happen in your darkest moments? Because it's in your darkest moments that you're the most vulnerable. It's in the darkest moments that you've admitted to yourself that there's something that needs to change. There's something in your life that's not right. And you need help. If maybe it's the loss of a family member. When you lose a family member, I lost my brother when he was 16 years old to a car accident. And that's another story, man. I'm not going to go into that story, but I share details about that in my book. And that in of itself is another powerful story of God moving in my life. But when you lose a family member, that is a dark day, especially when it's a mother or a father. I mean, my dad's gone now too. He's just over 10 years. He's been gone. When you lose your family members, a part of you dies, and that's a dark moment.
Yes.
And that's when he shows up and he says, hey, remember me? You can't do this on your own. Lean on me. Give it to me. Let me carry the burden of that pain, of that addiction, of whatever it is that's in your life that you're struggling with. Give it to me. Let me carry it. And that's what he does.
That's beautiful. Kind of reminds me of the it's not a poem, but the very famous called Footsteps.
Yep.
And it right, and it's about two sets of footsteps in the sand, and then at certain points there's only one set of footsteps, and then you know the story I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
That's kind of that's that same theme as what you just described in Darkest Moments. This has been a fantastic show. It looks like people are starting to wind down now. They're starting to jump off, but they're jumping off pretty quick now. I think they hear me gearing up here. As a how do you do and what you want people to leave with as your final with a big wave of your fans. We had almost 400 people on today, right circling right at around 400. Some great questions and expanding the message that I really want to continue to work on. And you're right, in building on that recovery path, because there's too many coincidences, so to speak. There's too many of this stuff going on that we need to pay more attention to. And I think now is an important time, because I have a real strong feeling that there's going to be some heated rhetoric that only continues to build right now in what's going on in today's world. I left that intro video on there, and I think I used that one the last time. Maybe not. Maybe I used the religion one, but that was a different one.
Used a different video last time.
Okay, so but on this video, that's a year and a half old. That video is, and it's the same stuff going on, but it's only getting worse now.
Yeah.
No matter what your politics are, aside from that, what I mean is there's so much divisiveness, and it's not just this administration. It's not just the last administration or the same one again before the last. This
Right.
isn't a new thing. This divisiveness. It's just continually to build.
Yeah.
And there's something about that.
Yeah.
To me, there's something about that in revelations, and in the chapters and verses in the Bible, this is a time where we really need to investigate, come to Jesus, so to speak, with our paths and our journeys. It just feels something's heavier. So what do you want to leave people with here, brother? Oh wow, everybody bailed on me. I shouldn't went in that. We've got a couple people hanging on, probably the regulars. But go ahead. What do you want to leave everybody with, my friend?
Yeah, first of all, it's been great to be with you, and I would just tell people, if you're listening and you're still struggling with something, know that you're not alone. Right? The enemy is going to tell you exactly what you need to hear to keep you where you want you. Doesn't matter what you've done, what's been done to you, how you were brought up. None of that matters. You're not defined by that. You're not defined by anything other than what you say you are and what God says you are, more importantly. And so I just encourage people to walk in that and to remember that and to look for God in the stillness and in the small moments, and to take a moment, when I, like, even today when I was like, okay, like I was kind of mentally preparing for this episode, knowing what we were going to talk about and everything. And I'm just sitting in my chair this morning, and I'm just meditating and I'm praying and I'm worshiping and I'm playing a game on my phone and just kind of having some quiet time with God. I'm a little ADHD, so my mind kind of goes off on rabbit trails. So sometimes I have to do something to keep focused. But just know that you're not defined by that. And so if you want to find me online, you can. My podcast is Unmasked.
Write it down.
My podcast is Unmasked with Wesley Farnsworth. That's available anywhere you can listen to podcasts. It's on YouTube as well. My book is The Blueprint of Becoming. It's available anywhere books are sold. And you can find me online at wesleyfarnsworth.com. If you go to wesleyfarnsworth.com/start, I have all of the links to be able to find everything. And I have some freebies there that you can sign up to my email list, and I'll shoot them out to you with some practical guides that people have asked me for numerous times, including one I mentioned here on this last episode that we did. I put those together as PDF downloads. And so if you subscribe, give me your email address, I'll shoot those over to you so that you have them to reference to help you grow in your faith. But find me online, wesleyfarnsworth.com. I'd love to connect with you, hear about what's going on in your life. You can send me a message through the contact form and let me know what's going on in your life and how I can pray for you and be there for you. And I'm also now available for speaking engagements at churches and events around the country.
Beautiful, brother. Where are you out of again?
I'm in Iowa. I'm based out of Iowa.
Iowa. I'll tell you what. I'm going to throw you back in the, so to speak, in the green room. Put in your contact information on that so I can copy and paste while I wind up. Got a couple of people jump back on, and I think just to see if we're still on and then jump back off. But yeah, we're at an hour and 50 minutes almost right now. So I'm going to throw you in there, and if you just pop that on there, I appreciate it. We'll hook up shortly. I'll see you on the other side. Okay.
Yep.
Give everybody a big wave, brother. Perfect. All right. Yeah. Great show. And these are the kind of things I want to continue to do, meaning a couple of subjects that I think are critical in moving forward. Not the show moving forward, or not a specific incidents or whatever moving forward, but while I'm talking here, I'm gonna put up Mr. Farnsworth contact information. Congratulations, by the way, brother, on the podcast. I know how much work there is in that, and how much reward there is that comes from it. I'm gonna throw you up here right now. And those conversations, I think it's important that we all really communicate together more and more, and that we come together as an agency, as a people, as a curious body. I think we need to really take a look at how conversations, how important those things are, and that's why we do this show, because that intro video that I led in with this to this episode with, like I said, was done a year and a half-ish ago, and the same basic things are continuing to happen, even more so. And when we have opportunities to have conversations with folks like Wesley here, and their expertise and their guidance and their knowledge, to be able to bring that together and have, I want to get into some more discourse. I would love to have the ability to get into some more discourse with some of these subjects, because I think discourse is tremendously important. Somebody keeps popping on and popping off. I don't know what they're doing there. Anyway, at the end of the day, it's important that we have insights, and we get those from Straight Talk. And the only way to have those two things happen is to be able to ask questions that you may not believe, or go into every conversation wanting to learn, and go out into everyday moments being always curious. And with that, this is Insights and Straight Talk. I'm your host. That's me. Do you know my name? It's Rodd Duff, and I love what I'm doing here, and I love the audience and how you guys make this show. So with that, I am out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here, and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.